All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN on a Friday. And don't forget, Saturday night, UFC 249. We're going to break it down in just a minute here. Jon Anik, the voice of the UFC. He'll have the call on ESPN and ESPN Fight Pass, or excuse me, ESPN Plus, 249. Ferguson, Gaethje, Cejudo, Cruz. The weigh-ins are complete. Everybody has made weight. We are ready to go. Live sports are back. And we're going to bring Jon Anik into the conversation, the voice of the UFC, as he's going to break it all down and kind of talk about a pretty big event right now in the world that's going on. And Jon is kind enough to take a couple minutes to preview the fights as we are ready to go. Saturday night live from Jacksonville, Florida for UFC 249. And Jon Anik is with us now here on the Sports Bash. Mike Gill in Atlantic City. Jon, what's going on, man?
What's up, Mike? Good to be with you, man. Certainly a different vibe here in Jacksonville than we are used to, but the show must go on, and at least as far as the card is concerned, tomorrow night's the best card that I've ever been assigned, so we're ready to go.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were looking forward to this a couple of weeks ago, and it fell through, but here we are again, and just kind of give us a little bit of the feel around, everything that you're used to doing normally and how, like, the weigh-ins and all the pre-fight stuff, is it a noticeably different?
Very much so. I mean, I just got back upstairs from emceeing the stare downs at the host hotel. But for a fight card of this magnitude, as you well know, Mike, we would be doing a huge blowout ceremony, a weigh-in at an arena in front of 3,000 or 5,000 people potentially. So obviously that is not happening. But the athletes seem to be in a great place. I think some of them are filled with some anxiety. I mean, you can kind of tell, right? The fighters who are wearing masks and gloves everywhere they go, maybe they have either a heightened awareness and moral obligation to others, or they're more concerned about their own well-being. But I think the athletes have really handled it well. Most of their training camps weren't compromised. We've heard a lot of athletes say that they've learned how to train smarter through this and might even incorporate some of their new strategies even when we do get back to some semblance of normalcy. But I think for us as commentators, we use the crowd, and you know this, Mike, as a performance enhancer. So without that, we're going to have to just be banging those Monster Energy drinks and find another source.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little odd, watching in the Brazil fights a couple of weeks ago. I guess that was like a month or so ago now, when there's no crowd, and then having that feeling that everybody can hear you. Like sometimes you're cognizant as the guy calling the action is everybody listening to me right now? But when there's such a crowd, no one can hear what you're doing. I guess that's got to be an odd situation.
Absolutely, and I don't have the benefit of calling Dana White's Contender Series in the past. Certainly when we start some events in Vegas right in the middle of the afternoon,
True.
The crowd isn't there yet. Like when Floyd Mayweather fought, nobody would show up until obviously the end of the night. But so we are used to that condition a little bit. But in this type of setting where our staff has been completely pared down, essentially, the fighters are going to hear us, no doubt about it. So maybe when they're up against the octagon, we'll be a little bit quieter with our tone. So there might be a little bit of a navigation with that early on, just out of respect for the athletes. But there are plenty of times, Mike, where these athletes start engaging with us when they're in a situation right up against the fence near the broadcast booth. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out. But I think big picture, we're all just hopeful that we can get one in the can safely so that we can move on to Wednesday and, really start to regain some traction.
I think in my time doing this, CM Punk has been challenged to fight 10 times by fighters. I mean,
right.
It's they come right up and say, "You're next, man. You're next."
That's so funny. Yeah, and I'm sure he's a good foil for them, and I'm sure he's a good sport about it. But obviously I'm not an analyst. I'm a play-by-play guy, so the opportunities for me to be critical anyway are few and far between, but it's going to be different. I'm not going to be sitting at the same table as Joe Rogan, so it's definitely going to have a different feel.
Oh, wow. That's going to be interesting. Yeah. All right. So Ferguson, very unpredictable 12-fight streak here. Gaethje, who obviously wasn't the original opponent in this fight, but has been known as somewhat of a highlight film here. This one still, even though this wasn't what some people expected at the beginning of this 249, you got a great one at the top of the card.
It is shaping up as a classic. I know Dana White has said it's maybe the most violent fight that we can put together. It's certainly bulletproof matchmaking. There is no possible way to envision these two fighters stylistically engaging in a fight that isn't anything other than one of the fights of the year. And there's no way, Mike, if we do this again in 3 weeks, you would ever hear me so convicted about a matchup. But these guys, stylistically, are bulletproof. There's no doubt about it. I think both of them are probably as hard to prepare for as maybe anybody in the division because they don't mind going to those dark places. They have heart for days. They're certainly wild and a little bit unpredictable. You know, Tony Ferguson deserves the distinction as the betting favorite, no doubt about it. But Justin Gaethje is in a really good way right now. He certainly was able to maximize those extra 3 weeks that he got. I do think the fight's more competitive than maybe Las Vegas has it right now with Ferguson about a minus 180 betting favorite. But I'm telling you, bro, like if this fight doesn't get a bonus of some kind, I will be absolutely stunned.
Yeah, and I know Ferguson, obviously, would you look at him as kind of maybe the most overlooked and best 155 guy right now?
Yeah, you put it well. I mean, if you're talking about Mount Rushmore of mixed martial arts, most people would argue that John Jones and George St. Pierre at the very least deserve 2 of those spots, and maybe you'd make an argument for Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is 28-0. But Tony Ferguson hasn't lost since Cinco de Mayo 2012. He was the first guy at 155 pounds to ever put a double-digit winning streak on paper. And by the way, that winning streak is still active. It's incredible to me, Mike, that his legacy is as one of this sport's all-time greats, future first-ballot Hall of Famer. And yet, for one circumstance or another, he's never competed for the sport's ultimate prize. He's never competed for the undisputed UFC lightweight title. I don't think he cares about that as much as maybe I do as a fan of his. But there is no doubt that there is some underappreciation because of that reality that he's never been the undisputed champion, despite a body of work that is as good as anybody's ever.
Jon Anik, the voice of 249 UFC, Saturday night, Jacksonville, Florida. All right, Dominic Cruz hasn't fought in, like 3 years now, and he wakes up bright and early, says, weigh me in, let's get this baby going. What do you expect in the co-main event? Henry Cejudo is waiting for him. I think this one's got explosive written all over it.
Yeah, what a fascinating matchup, and certainly Dominic Cruz is one of my broadcast partners and best friends in this world, so I'm excited that not only is he back for the first time since 2016, but he's back in a championship setting. Certainly there are other guys maybe like Aljamain Sterling who might be more worthy on paper, but Dominic is the consensus great bantamweight of all time. Henry wanted this fight and this matchup, and Henry can call shots as a former 2-division, now 1-division champion. But it's a fascinating stylistic matchup. The big question for me is on the Cruz side, because Cejudo is primed, he is primal, he is definitely closer to his fighting prime, one would think, than Dominic Cruz, who had 5 major surgeries. But has Cruz lost a step? He intimates absolutely not. But I think we won't know until the fight starts if Dominic Cruz is just as fast and mobile on his feet as he's been in the past. Because if he has lost some of that mobility, Mike, I don't think his style is going to be as effective. But he vows that he's just as fast physically. He's in the best place he's been in 4 or 5 years. So, again, competitive fight, and I think going to go pretty long, too. So I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Now, what might not be long is the heavyweight fight. Ngannou, Rosenstruck, you look at 2 guys who can really pack a strong punch. You might get quick work in this one.
Yeah, I had a handicapper on our podcast, the Anik and Florian podcast on Monday, and he said his best bet on the entire card was under a round and a half for Francis Ngannou and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, right? You got to feel like inside of 7.5 minutes, Mike, we're going to get some finality here. There are certain heavyweight fights that have been outliers, whether it was Francis Ngannou against Derek Lewis or even Ngannou going 25 minutes with Stipe. So not out of the realm of possibility that these guys go the full 15 minutes, but they might be the 2 biggest punchers and strikers in this division. And if you are to read any truth into what they've said here this week, they're both going to go for broke pretty early. So I think it's a 1-round fight. I've been wrong plenty before, but I do believe if you're coming in on the under a round and a half, probably a pretty safe bet this week.
Now, obviously, ESPN Plus has got the main card there, but interesting, Cowboy's back, and he had some interesting comments following the McGregor loss about how he showed up in that one, and you'll see him against Anthony Pettis, who was a former champion here, and, Cowboy says Donald showed up for the McGregor fight. I mean, do we expect to see a different version of Cerrone this time?
I do. There were a lot of things working against him in the McGregor fight, not the least of which was the matchup that I didn't think was particularly favorable. And let's also not forget, Conor was almost a 3-1 favorite to beat Donald Cerrone, who was coming in off of a couple losses. But now Cerrone's lost 3 in a row. So now you got to think, even if he's not at the height of motivation, he's got to be pretty damn close. So I think you're going to get a big effort out of Donald Cerrone. He's certainly focusing on the cardio and certain elements that he thinks that are going to be advantageous in the matchup. Close fight according to Vegas. I think Pettis is slight favorite right now. He won their first meeting back in 2013 rather quickly. That, of course, was at lightweight. This is at welterweight, where I think by and large Pettis has looked pretty good. So it's a close one. Too tough to call for me, but certainly I think it speaks to the embarrassment of riches that is UFC 249, that fight could actually be a prelim and not on the pay-per-view main card.
All right, John, if there's a fight on regular television to get people to plus, what's the fight they must tune in for on regular TV?
Gosh, I mean, we are so loaded, right? I mean, certainly on UFC Fight Pass early on, the rematch between Vicente Luque and Nico Price is about as good an all-action fight as we can put together at welterweight. But I'm curious to see the women on ESPN. Carla Esparza, former champion, she would destroy the woman who won the title a few years ago. So she is much improved. She's a slight favorite here against the karate hottie Michelle Watterson. They're number 7 versus number 8 in the world, and 115 pounds right now is our deepest, best women's division. The top 5 is just drunk with former champions and elite talent, and only one of these women is going to be in the mix. So high stakes in that one. I expect it to be high octane as well, and certainly it's a fight that jumps off the prelim portion for me, man.
Now, I'll leave you with this. I know you got to run. Jon Anik, the voice of UFC 249, Saturday night, Jacksonville, Florida. Sports returns. And this is odd because usually these fights set up another fight. But how is this changing the dynamic of what the next fight for these guys might be?
It's a great question, and candidly, I've done a lot of media this week, and not a lot of people are thinking that far ahead. You have seen Khabib Nurmagomedov, as an example, come out and say when Ramadan ends in late May, I'm not going to wait till September or October, intimating that he wants to get back in July. So that would appear to be a good thing. But I think once the infrastructure is built out at Fight Island, and there are 2 legitimate locations, a domestic one and then one that is not in the U.S., so to speak, then I think the world becomes our oyster again, and you're going to start to see, you know, guys fight and then turn around 2 or 3 months later in a usual fight cycle. But you're right. I think for a lot of these guys, they're just hoping to get one in the can, get a win, and maybe just go home to their families for 4 or 5 months with the paycheck and hopefully, you know, avoiding a second wave of COVID-19 and letting the dust settle. But it's just a weird climate, and I think we're going to have a lot more answers if we can get through tomorrow night seamlessly. All
right, be safe down there. And, of course, ESPN Plus has it all. And, of course, Jon Anik will call it. And I guess you said you'll be sitting at a separate table. That's going to be an interesting setup for the broadcast. So have a great broadcast, man. Well, I know a lot of people are looking forward to this card, not only for a great card, but just some more sports action, a feeling of normalcy. And, John, stay safe, man. We appreciate you jumping on board.
Pleasure, my man. Keep up the good work. We'll talk soon.
All right. Jon Anik, everybody, the voice of UFC 249. And, of course, that card you can hear, you can watch tomorrow night live. Yes, live sports returns with UFC 249, the return of fighting. That's fighting. That's what they're calling it. Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who are probably just casual UFC fans that might just say, you know what? It's something live. It's action going on. I'm going to tune in. And as I asked him, the card that's on ESPN television, what fight on that card could get you over to plus? I think if you tune in on the TV side, you're going to see action that is going to make you want to keep watching more of the action. And at the top of the card, you couldn't get a better return, I guess, with Ferguson and Gaethje. That one has all sorts of craziness built into it. I'm imagining, as he mentioned, highlights. And Ngannou, you could see a heavy knockout there early in that fight. He said the over-under 1 round, so you can do some betting on this as well. All right, thanks to Jon Anik from the UFC 249. The wait is over. Live sports are back, and so are we on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.